Good evening. Welcome to the Who's Left podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from an unapologetically leftist perspective. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm broadcasting from Bloomington. You know, last week's sweep by Zohran Mamdani-endorsed Democratic Socialist candidates in the New York congressional primaries highlighted a growing rift within the Democratic coalition. Establishment figures like House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, longtime strategist James Carville, and former DNC Chairman Jaime Harrison flipped their lids, bemoaning the gains by an insurgent left flank of the party. Harrison in particular said, quote, "If you hate the Democratic Party, then please don't run for our nomination, don't use our resources, don't rely on our volunteers, don't use our infrastructure, don't ask Democrats to invest their time, money, and energy in your campaign. Focus on building the party you actually support." End quote. Okay, fine. The problem is when leftists and progressives do that, and third parties draw from the Democratic vote, then we get accused of playing spoiler. You can't have it both ways. As Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez noted in 2020 when she said in any other country she and Joe Biden would not be in the same party, the U.S. two-party system forces a wide spectrum of ideologies into just two umbrellas, meaning progressives, socially liberal corporatists share a party label. In a country with proportional representation and a multi-party system, she and I would belong to a labor or social democratic party. More parties are one way to break the duopoly. My guest last week, British author Metin Pekin, detailed a no-party system. Either way, the work begins by revoking the special privileges held by the two major parties baked into our laws, and that begins by electing independents of any stripe who will undertake that work. Tonight, my guests are a trio of candidates running from outside of the two-party umbrella right here in Indiana. Returning guest and Statehouse District 13 candidate Ben Davis, State Senate District 23 candidate Joshua Brant, and Secretary of State candidate Harrison Jacobo. We will bring them in momentarily, but first, we are also independent and as such could use your help. We don't paywall content, we don't charge candidates for interviews, and we certainly don't have billionaire benefactors. We refuse to hide important information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even to our financial detriment. So please, if you find value in this work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And while a paid subscription is the best way to help us grow and sustain this project, you can help in other ways by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding our content to your people. Get us when you can. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making the state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. Follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it is PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Now, let's welcome our guests tonight. We've got Ben Davis. Ben, welcome.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me on again.
Glad to have you back. Also with us tonight, Joshua Brant, candidate for Senate District 23. Joshua, nice to meet you, sir.
How you doing?
And also with us is Harrison Jacobo, candidate for Secretary of State. Harrison, nice to see you again.
Well, good. It's good to be on.
Thank you all for joining me tonight, guys. Listen, first of all, before we say anything further, I just want to thank you for doing what you're doing. It is an uphill battle for sure, running as an independent, running outside the two-party system. I think all of us here on this call, for sure, and I don't know, the majority, a plurality, a large number of Hoosiers are also fed up with the two-party system and the way it works, and it's going to take folks like you sort of, crashing through that ceiling to go ahead and, open things up for other folks. So with that, I'm talking to former Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard here in a couple weeks, and he made news by turning in something like 74,000 signatures, which is double the amount you need to qualify for the ballot for Secretary of State, and that is a statewide race. So that is like the most number of signatures you would have to procure to get on the ballot of anyone. Harrison, you are a statewide candidate yourself. Ben and Joshua are running in districts, so your thresholds are lower. I'd like to talk a little bit about just the process of securing ballot access as an independent. Ben, now you're in a state house race, so that's going to be the smallest district of anybody here on this call tonight. What was your magic number? Like, how many signatures did you have to gather?
My magic number was 384 verified signatures in my district.
And Joshua, state Senate district, a little bigger. How about you?
My calculation 632, but my county said 628, so right around that.
So about double, and I guess that makes sense as there are half as many Senate seats as there are House seats. And then now, Harrison, for you running for Secretary of State, statewide race, you had to hit that same threshold as Ballard, and that is something in the neighborhood of like 37,000 signatures. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I guess what does the process look like? How do you go about that? How do you make sure you're meeting the thresholds? I understand, like, again, in Ballard's case, he procured double because a lot are gonna get thrown out. Did you guys, Ben, Joshua, experience that in the process of getting your signature certified? How many did you wind up getting, and how many wound up counting? And Ben, I'll start with you there.
Yeah, so this process has been going on for 6 months, right? With over 30 people on my team, including Harrison. Thanks for helping gather some signatures for me as well. We gathered overall about 650 signatures, and that includes about 2,500 doors knocked over that 6-month period. So again, 650. I'm coming out with right at 428, so a little bit above the threshold to make sure that we have a buffer in case the state office decides to do anything funny. But yeah, that's where we're at. So it was something like a 63% verification rate. So a lot of the folks, that percentage, right, either weren't registered to vote in the first place. They were like, yeah, I'd love to sign for you, but I had no idea. And to have that longer conversation at the door when you need to go to the next door to get these signatures when you're under the gun is tough. And then the other major population were people that were registered to vote, but not at the address where they were in District 13, where I knocked at their door. So.
And so those are the things that will get a signature tossed is A, the person's not registered to vote, or B, it's a wrong address, or all their information doesn't quite line up with what it says on their voter registration. Joshua, how about you? Same sort of the process, going knocking on doors, asking people to sign their signature, get you on the ballot.
Yeah. As a first-time candidate and an independent, I didn't really have a volunteer network that I could rely on. These guys, they had, the beginnings of a party structure. So I did a lot of my work primarily on my own and knocked a lot of doors, walked a lot of miles. But we got her done. We got where we needed to be. So.
What kind of buffer did you have?
In terms of, I had figured on a 30% buffer, and that's what I was kind of aiming for. But I found out right there at the end of May that I was actually as my original estimate was about 200 shy of where I needed to be. So not only did I need to really step it up here in June, to make my number, I also needed to step it up to, have that buffer there as well. So
now, Harrison, in your case, I said, running for a statewide office, you had to hit that 37,000 threshold. And, unlike Mayor Ballard, you don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations and that sort of apparatus behind you. I guess he got a little hand from former Governor Mitch Daniels, and it's a lot easier to put in place the infrastructure of a signature gathering campaign, I imagine, when you have the funding to do so. Now, I understand today is the final day to gather signatures. It's the last day of June. You're not gonna make that threshold. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We just with all we had going on, we just weren't able to get enough volunteers, or really, because it's when you do statewide, when you do like a statewide, you really need to have basically every district, because whenever you turn in signatures, you have to turn those signatures in those districts. So, you have Marion County, you've got Hamilton County. So if you collect signatures in Hamilton County, which we actually had a group from Seattle come out, and they were excited that a Socialist Party of Indiana was forming. So they came out and actually helped us out for a few days. I think it was about 4 or 5 days in total. And they themselves were able to collect like around 400 or 500 signatures. But at the same time, they were from probably 20 different counties. So you have to think, you're going to be able to drive 20 miles, drive 2 hours to Fort Wayne to turn in 3 signatures, or, without having that statewide party structure, or, thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. It's really an undertaking.
It's a ton of work, and then and I understand, like, to your point, it's you have to have the signatures from a geographically diverse area, right? You can't just stay in Indianapolis, for example, and get 37,000 signatures there. Like, they have to come from every county in every part of the state. Is that right, or am I making that up?
That we were too sure if that was a requirement, but because one of the main things is just being the 38,000 signatures and getting them turned in per each district, but it not anywhere. I think it's from the Constitution itself, the Indian Constitution, that this requirement is. I don't think there's a spot that says it has to be geographically specific to every county.
Joshua, you're shaking your head. Is that is a no? That doesn't need to be that way? Or?
That's my understanding. The signatures, they don't need to. Obviously, when it comes to votes, you really want to make sure that you're appealing to your broader base. But the signatures themselves, they don't, as far as I know, need to be from a varied geography.
Okay. So, Harrison, I want to come back to you. With Ballard and his signatures, it's not just, he is an independent and he's trying to get on the ballot line as for himself. He's also, I guess, forming something called the Lincoln Party, which, to my knowledge, there are no other candidates running under that banner. But if he secures the requisite number of votes, now that he's will be on the ballot in all likelihood for November, if he secures a certain number of votes in November's election, then the Lincoln Party gets ballot access going forward. You were running under the banner of the Socialist Party of Indiana, a new party. I was there at the kickoff event in Terre Haute. Met some of you guys there. Good to meet you. With you not making the ballot in November, what does that mean for the future of the Socialist Party of Indiana going forward?
The only thing it changes is, instead of having to run signatures one time to get access for 4 years, we'll just be doing, kind of like what Ben Davis was doing, is we'll just have to hit the ground and get signatures for our candidates that we would like to run starting, next year as well.
So if you want to run this back again and try and get the Socialist Party recognized as an official party in Indiana. You have to go through this process again in 4 years. And I guess what's the time horizon for the signature gathering then? Do you have between now and then to go ahead and secure the requisite number of signatures? Or do you have to start, I don't know, a year out or whatever it is?
Well, I'm not sure how far back you can collect signatures. I don't think there's like a time limit or something like that. I mean, if you collect the signatures 6 months before before the collection signatures can be signed in, they still could be signed in. But if you're doing it 4 years out, it might be more work to do that if those persons move in that time period or something changes. So it's probably more labor saving if you do it maybe a year or 6 monts beforehand. Just start collecting them and then getting them ready by that point.
And I know, Ben, you were also there in Terre Haute with us a couple months ago and, running on the Socialist Party line or attempting to run on the Socialist Party line. If we had secured one, what does that do to your candidacy? Does it just show you as an independent now on the ballot? How's that going to work out?
So my Can 19 forms, the petition forms, right? There's 2 checkboxes, right? You say either I'm independent, no party, or I'm independent with this party, whether it's the Socialist Party of Indiana or the Lincoln Party or whatever you want to put on that. Now, the recognition of the party as an official ballot line is as you stated, right? You need to get on the ballot with 2% of the last election as far as signatures, and then you need to get 2% of the vote in that general election, and then you have that ballot line going forward for the next 4 years. So for me, my ballot is going to say I'm going to be on the Socialist Party of Indiana, just as Greg Ballard, if he gets ballot access as well, will say Lincoln Party. Now it's again not an official minor party that has ballot access. Socialist Party of Indiana will not for at least the next 4 years. So we are going to be continuing to run candidates as independents for the next 4 years until we get another shot at Secretary of State. But yeah, as far as mine goes, my understanding is my ballot's going to show Socialist Party of Indiana.
Fantastic. And then Joshua, in your case, your ballot line will just say independent come November. Is that right?
That's correct.
So I guess, Joshua, what inspired you to do this, to take on this uphill climb, to run as an independent? Certainly not the easy route. Why this way? Why not through one of the 2 parties? Tell us about your process and how you arrived here.
Well, my breaking point for the 2-party system is kind of a gradual evolution. In my 20s, I was kind of an unapologetic liberal or leftist or what do you want. I actually remember there was a situation where I was talking to a business lawyer that came to our school. They were offering sort of a pro bono ask questions, and I remember I pitched an idea to him because I wanted to see if it was a legal business concept here in Indiana. I'd seen it elsewhere and thought it was good. He told me, he's like, I've worked in this field for so many years, like 20, 30 years, and I don't think anybody's ever asked me that question. I felt pretty good about myself. I was like, well, I am a liberal, and I remember thinking to myself, I was so proud to say that. And now I look back on it at 40 and I'm like, wow, no, I must have sounded really arrogant. But, and then into my 30s, I grew up a little bit, and I think adopted more of a centrist perspective. And then as I got even older, I had kids. You come to realize that at a certain point, centrism isn't always the right choice either, because, there's clear rights and wrongs in life. You can't just stay in the middle all the time. And I served my country, and as I mentioned, I've got kids, and I don't like the way that the politicians that are in these parties are leading our country, and I don't think that my kids or anybody else's kids should have to inherit the mess that they're slated to get if we don't do something. So
100% on that, and I know a big part of your campaign platform is anti-corruption, and I do want to come back and circle around and talk about that some. But so Harrison, I guess with you not on the ballot come November, what does that mean for you? What are you going to be doing? How are you going to be looking to influence the election this year?
Well, with the way the candidates are, I'm not a big fan of Bo By and Greg Ballard, so I guess the best way I'm going to go about it is kind of
certainly not a fan of Max Engling, just to make that clear.
Yeah. But what my plan is just to focus on kind of the party, SPI party, and work towards, how do we take what we've learned and catapult that into this idea of, working on addressing the two-party system. So, that's going to be a big thing, and it's just really getting out to talking to people and getting involved more in the community and enforcing, and kind of like working towards that party that we want to use to gain, some kind of way out of this duopoly.
What did you hear from folks as you were out there going through the signature gathering process? I mean, I assume that you're going to hear from people that on across the political spectrum that they're not terribly happy with either party, even if they tend to vote for one or the other all the time.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was a little more surprised on than I expected was when I unabashedly was saying that we're the Socialist Party and this is what we're doing. There wasn't a lot of people were actually kind of excited about it and were willing to do that. I did have some conversations where, I had to push a little bit, because some people were like, well, I'm going to vote for, Blythe Potter. I was like, well, this isn't, and then conversation, well, this doesn't really affect what you vote in November, but this can affect if we can have, and also too, the thing is when we started, we actually talked to Blythe Potter about it, and, because she's kind of actually my neighbor down the road in Barbersville, so I've already had conversations with her as well. So, and same thing too with one of the other candidates for mayor. When they signed my petition, they were like, yeah, competition's good. So I mean, these are people who are Democrats saying this. So it's not even just just us wanting into a lot of people, but even people who are Democrats, who are elected Democrats or were previously elected Democrats, were excited about this idea of having multiple parties.
If you believe in democracy as a concept, you should want to see more options, more competition, or real choices for folks other than just the two. It is very hard to compress the nuances of the entire political spectrum into just two choices. It is, it does not make sense. So, but Ben, when we talked back. My God, was it January? The world has changed immensely just since that time. And at that point, there was not a Democrat in that race for State House 13. And I sort of said, hey, boy, it'd be nice to see as an experiment, how an independent candidate would perform against a Republican. Well, since that time, we've got a Democrat in that race now, and it's a three-way race at least, maybe four. I don't know. Is there a Libertarian in your area?
Not that I'm aware of now.
Okay, so we got a three-way race, and so inevitably here comes the spoiler talk, right? I mentioned it at the beginning of the show. Has anybody tried to convince you to drop out of the race? Ben, listen, we really respect what you're doing, but you're going to pull from the Democrats. We have a real chance to win this race this year.
Yeah, I really haven't. So The Democrats in this area, most of us have good relationships, and they understand what I'm doing. They understand, and most of them disagree with what the Topino County Party Democratic chair decided when I considered running as a Democrat versus independent. I was kind of like, there's both pros and cons for both sides. I, asked for that endorsement since I hadn't voted in the last 2 primaries. He said, no, we don't want a Democratic Socialist on our ticket. We'd rather run no one. Yet there is a Democrat on the ticket now. But yeah, the most of the people that I talk to that are Democrats here locally are just like, yeah, we understand why you're doing it. We disagree with the party chair's decision. We're upset with him about that. And some of them are just stopped there. A couple of them say, yes, no, you're going to steal Democratic votes or whatever. And I don't really buy into that. That, as he said, right? They don't believe a Democrat can win in this district, so they were okay not having one. So there's that in the first place. They weren't going to invest any dollars significantly in the race. So, but my intention, and still is at this point from the start to now, is I am full court press of this campaign, right? I'm not just running to be a paper candidate, which is another reason that motivated me, because the previous candidate in 2024 was just a paper candidate and got 26% of the vote. So I thought, if that's the bare minimum, then I can obviously do better than that. So that's the experiment. Now that it's a 3-way race, looking at the win number and everything, our campaign is still planning on a win number as if it was a 2-way race. We're being very aggressive. We want to win this race. We want to, take the power away from the MAGA Republican, in this race, and show the state and the country what an independent Democratic Socialist that one can win in the heartland of the country, and to encourage others to do the same.
So, Josh, you're in the same area there as Ben. Maybe just a step up at the state Senate. I've spoken with the Democrat in your particular race on several occasions. Actually, Dr. Sanders is one of my earliest guests on the show. Nice guy. Do you get the spoiler treatment?
Not nearly as much as I thought I would. But I still get the sense that there's some holdouts in terms of, like, on either side, because I'm gonna be trying to appeal to more than just Democrats in my race, because I do have 2/3 of my district is Republican. So that being said, the Republicans have been the stronger holdouts, to be honest with you. The more firm no's, but as far as people trying to talk me out of, running or pushing that split ticket, misconception, I haven't really seen that too much. And I don't know if that's just because I've just been, collecting signatures at this juncture, or if it's something else. So
the dynamics of your particular race are quite interesting. I think the Republican barely survived their primary by only 3 votes. The incumbent Spencer Deary fought off a far right challenger in that district, and I wonder if that changes the way you run the race, the way Professor Sanders would run the race, or I suppose it's more difficult to appeal to the large middle if you have somebody like Spencer Deary, who can at least theoretically say, well, I'm more of a moderate, at least compared to Paula Copenhaver.
Yeah. And I got to be honest, it put me in a weird, just, because I paid close attention to it, and I'm sure Dr. Sanders did too. I was kind of torn. I found myself, because I thought that Copenhaver would be the easier candidate to beat, but also maybe not the best for Indiana. So, I think what I settled on was that I really wanted to see Spencer win his primaries, but now that he has, it's time for somebody else to take over.
The boosting the opponent you think is easier to beat can totally bite you in the ass. I generally think that's how we wound up with Donald Trump as president in 2016, and that whole primary process. Hillary Clinton was really, really savoring getting a chance to face him, thinking it was going to be a cakewalk, right? Yeah, well, not so fast. And, lo and behold, we have the last 10 years here. Harrison, what, listen, I know for all of you, it is an uphill climb. We've, mentioned that many times here before, but what would we like to see from the folks that wind up getting elected, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, or our independents right here? What do we need to do legislatively, process-wise, at the state level to make it easier for independents to sort of break up the two-party system, as it were?
I'm actually glad you said that, because one of the things that I, after reading over the Constitution, Indiana Constitution, one of the major things about it is the fact that it has a two major party system, which is written in the Constitution. So there can only ever be two major parties. So either you have the most votes or the second most votes. And that's where all the kind of support can go to. Being a minor party, I don't know what percentage or what kind of resources you get, but you don't get any of it all from the actual state. So to actually address the issue, you would have to change the Constitution, saying that there is no such thing as two major parties. There's only parties, and really just put it into writing that way. There might be some way to do some kind of laws, but challenges can happen if they don't fit with the language of the Constitution. But if we can change that part of it, then we won't have to worry about that. Because already, like the Constitution making the way it is, there's always been an uphill battle in Indiana for any kind of stuff to happen because of the way it's written. But again, it's not like a lot of things listen that way, because even education, the public education is in the Constitution, but we don't fund it correctly. We don't actually follow the Constitution in that sense. So, there's always a way to get around it, so long as you've got enough resources and money.
It certainly seems like it. Ben, let me ask you the same thing. I know, amending the state constitution, that is certainly a difficult task. Just in terms of state law, before we even get to the point of amending the Constitution, what would we like to see to make it easier for independents? What can we do, legislatively or legally to break up the two-party system?
Yeah, so some of the things that come to mind are process, right? I'm going to show my stack of signatures here, right? This is the work that we've done the last 6 months, and these are all paper. These are all door-to-door, ink on paper signatures. There is no electronic way to do this. There is no mail-in way to do this, like a mail-in ballot. You literally have to get something written down on a piece of paper. It has to be readable. They have to, verify it at the county clerk's office. That is a huge barrier and has, taken up all three of our lives for the last 6 months. So amending the process to allow, a potential electronic signatures, that would help immensely to be able to reach out to people. Just being able to change that process, maybe changing the percentages. Again, I don't know if the percentages are in the state constitution or not, but that could be a potential stepping stone. But yeah, again, two-party candidates, major party candidates, they either have to have voted in the last two primaries. That takes a couple of minutes per vote each time, and then they can be on the ballot, yay. Or they, like I attempted to do, have a conversation with your county party chair, and they say, cool, yeah, we'd like to put you on the ballot, writes a letter to the state party office, and you're in, versus what all three of us have to do. And other independents, right, is just we can turn in our first signature at the beginning of January, and June 30th right now was the last day in 2026 we can turn in our signatures. So making that process somehow easier with some of those or other ideas would be a step. But I do agree with Harrison that the Constitution needs to be amended in order to make the change that we all want to see.
So I guess, getting a commitment from candidates across the spectrum, Democrats or Republicans, to say, hey, this is a thing that we would pursue, is something that any Hoosier of any political stripe would or could like to see in their elected officials. But Joshua, are the folks in the two major parties going to help dismantle their stranglehold on the system? It seems like if there's one thing they agree on, it's that, well, listen, we can handle this. We don't need any help from the outside.
Yeah. And I think that actually, if you look back throughout history, there's actually, before the Republican Party, there was actually no additional barriers to running for office that I can think of, at least, outside of the Constitution. The Constitution defined the requirements that you needed to meet, but ever since the Republican Party came in, it's anytime the independents or third parties start showing a rise in popularity, they start setting more barriers down, which I think is actually unconstitutional. But, I'm not a lawyer. And maybe someday we'll be able to look into that a little further. But
that sounds like collusion, which is a form of corruption, and anti-corruption is the centerpiece of your campaign plan. Yes,
it is. And actually, part of my anti-corruption proposal even addresses the recognition of candidacy as a fundamental right. I found that to be kind of mind-blowing when I started doing the research for it, that it wasn't already, to be honest with you, because, all the things that make up a candidacy are already fundamental rights, but being a candidate is not. That blows me away.
Well, that's crazy. And I guess, Harrison, to your point, on your end, what they're not going to help, right? Like the Democrats and the Republicans all seem to agree that, well, hey, we're doing just fine with this two-party system as we've got it, don't they?
Yeah.
We all don't feel that way. Hoosiers don't feel that way. Something like 45% of everybody is independent, at least. Is that right?
Yeah, it's around that number. Yeah. There's more independents or people who don't claim either Democrat or Republican than there are Republicans and Democrats. But I mean, I would say that they will struggle with it because they have a problem even with progressives running on the Democratic Party ticket. I mean, I was on a campaign for Dr. Valerie McRae when she was running for state
2 years
Senate.
ago. Yeah.
For not state Senate, but running for U.S. Congress. And, you could see kind of like just the pushback that they got. There was no support. There was no, they were not, there was less than support. There was actually like condemnation because she didn't follow the party mechanism. She wasn't chosen next. She didn't do the work to be a candidate. She didn't do the work to be a nomination, and that really played out just throughout the whole race. So I mean, you can't even get progressives to run, in the party without being attacked or demeaned. So yeah, I mean, they're not going to be supportive of that kind of change to kind of push away some of their power or control over the party systems.
And so Ben, I guess let's talk about Thursday. We've got an event coming up in Indianapolis, I understand, to coincide with both the ending of the signature gathering process, officially turning in all that paperwork to the state to be certified that you will be on the ballot in November, and also, hey, America's got a birthday coming up this weekend, so Independence Day is the theme of this event on Thursday. Can you tell us what's going on there?
Yeah, so this silly idea came into my head. But I think it's cool. It just helps amplify this what we're talking about here about the larger hill that independents have to climb versus major party candidates. So 10 o'clock at the Stargate, which is in between the Statehouse and the Indiana government building. We're going to just have a little press event where we're going to talk about similar kinds of things here. and again, just try to like you're doing here. Thank you for amplifying the voices of independents in Indiana, trying to get the word out to Hoosiers of, hey, we're not just some crazy people who decided to go in our county office one day and file something. It is the exact opposite. So just bringing awareness of this. So yeah, this will be 10 a.m. on Thursday right there at that Stargate Monument.
And Joshua, you'll be there as well?
Absolutely.
Very good. Harrison, are you going to be there?
Yeah. I plan to.
Fantastic. Are you guys? I know there are other independent candidates running across the state. We mentioned Mayor Ballard frequently. Down here in my neck of the woods, Sean Steele is running as an independent in House District, I want to say 75, down in Lawrence County. I'm paying particular attention to his race this fall because I don't think there is a challenger. And part of the problem that Democrats have running in places like Indiana in rural spaces is that just the Democratic brand is not great out here. And so, can somebody who's even, and again, I'm having Sean on, I want to say, about 4 weeks from now on July 28th, just confirmed that here earlier today. So, I don't know what his platform is all about, if he would, fit more with a Democrat or, more of a standard, real true independent, as it were. But just seeing what somebody can do against the Republican incumbent without the Democratic baggage, as it were. Do you, as you guys are out there gathering signatures and stuff, is that something you were hearing as well from folks? Is the Democratic Party not, they don't represent me terribly well out in your areas, particularly Ben, Joshua, are largely rural. Is that something that you've heard? Joshua, you're nodding your head.
I get a lot of people that, they try to get me to tell on myself in terms of whether, I lean left or right. And I always try to tell them the same thing. I'm not trying to tie myself to any preconceived notions of anything, because I think for myself. I want you to, as I judge each individual issue, I take each issue and I weigh the perspectives on both sides, and I want you to look at my take on each of those issues individually, and come up with a conclusion for yourself of what I am. I don't want you to tie me to something that somebody else has already labeled. You know what I mean?
Ben, same question to you. Are folks telling you that the Democratic Party's not doing such a hot job in rural areas? Maybe even on issue after issue. If you're talking to them at their door, you'll say, "Well, hey, you're kind of seem to actually be on the left. Why don't you vote for Democrats?"
Yeah, I haven't really had much pushback at doors that I'm not a Democrat. And when I say, hey, I'm an independent socialist candidate running for Statehouse, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, it is shocking to me that so few people don't react to that. They listen to what I'm running on, from free healthcare to doubling school teacher salaries and things like that, and I'm trying to get on the ballot, and in order to do that, I need your signature. I mean, the majority of people are just like, sure, when they sign, they don't react to that. They don't like, all right, ask some questions, or I'm a this or a that. They just, like you said, we said 45% or whatever it is of Hoosiers are independents. And I've found that appeals to people. Nothing specifically about, the Democrats this or Republicans that. It's like, I want more options. I've heard that many times. I would love to see more options.
People... We all are independent, theoretically. We should have areas where we disagree with whatever party that we associate with most closely. That is normal and natural. And, I think people see independence and like, oh, that resonates with me, just because, like, you're different. You're an independent thinker. You're a free thinker. You don't just toe the party line at all costs. Harrison, I want to ask you about the socialist label. This is a thing that I not get into it with. I have thoughtful discussions with folks online about is whether there is too much historical baggage with the socialist label, particularly in a I guess more conservative leaning state like Indiana. Is it harmful to your chances to call yourself a socialist out loud in 2026, or does that even mean anything anymore? Like they've been calling everything to the left of hunting the homeless for sport socialism for 100 years now.
Yeah. I would say it's not as big a thing as it used to be. It definitely was a lot of demagoguery around the idea of being a socialist and what a socialist means. And, I always think it's funny when people try to tie like Nazism to socialism because it's in their name. I think the difference being is, if someone is going to label you something, for example, if you call yourself a socialist, they're going to try to kind of denigrate that towards you. And if you kind of just come at it, be like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like with, just accept it and allow them to just, say what they will and just stand strong on your point. Don't try to explain too much about the difference between what it is and focus more on like what the policy act, focus on the policies of it. If they're going to, try to like change the narrative towards, the labeling, well, the important part is, what are you doing for your community? Are you focused on your community? Are you working on community-rooted policies? Do you have homeless in your community? How is your stores? How is your, how are you feeding people? And those are the things that people really care more about. And it's best to just avoid identity politics. And just focus on, the actual issues at hand.
Yeah. I think, well, you mentioned identity politics, and I think that is a term that gets tossed around. If you don't fall in line and support the Democrats, it's, you're sacrificing people of color. You're sacrificing the LGBTQ community. How would you respond to that framing?
I always go with, Joshua was talking about it, but I struggle with the idea of being, as a Democrat, being called a Democrat, things like that. So, how I think about it is besides ideology, besides all this thing, it's about the golden rule, and I like to follow the golden rule: is treat others as you would like to be treated yourself. So, if I wouldn't like to be treated that way, so I'm also going to defend those who are treated that way, because if we're not standing out for others, it doesn't really matter, what we're all called, so much as we're treated equally and fair and equitably. And I think that one of the things I always try to do is respect people as they want to be treated. So when it comes to, when my friends, decide that in their journey in life they want to transition, I'm one of the first people that, when they reach out to or they talk to, that I'm always, I supporting that. It's because it's important for you to feel the way you want to feel and be treated the way you want to, and be treated that way. And I think that's important. And it doesn't really matter what we think, because it's not us. If someone started calling me other names and stuff like that, I would be like, yeah, I'm like, this is who I am as a person. And please call me this way. So that's how I think that, people should be treated. It's just the way they want to be treated.
Yeah, and listen, to come at it from the other angle, that is very much a small government position, right? To let people determine those things for themselves and keep the government out of it. But the accusation leveled against socialists like us, Harrison and Ben, is that we're for big government. We want high taxes. Joshua, your one of your other major campaign planks is that you have a tax restructuring plan. We don't have a ton of time to dig too far into the weeds, but certainly we've seen what the fallout from Governor Braun and the Republicans in Indianapolis and what their tax restructuring plan from a couple years ago, what the fallout from that looks like, as we're seeing in, the schools are all having to go to their localities for referendums asking for money now because they're coming up way short. What kind of new thinkings in terms of, taxing and spending are you going to bring to Indianapolis?
Well, I think first of all, the issue with the Republican restructuring plan is primarily because they ran, lowering taxes at all costs, and that's lowering taxes is an easy thing to run on. But what Americans and Hoosiers, I think, really want is for us to do as much as we can with as little as possible. So it's about efficiency. And so my restructuring plan, it involves a reciprocal approach, taking away the rewards from big corporations that are just extracting a profit from Hoosiers and shipping it off somewhere else. We want to see reinvestment back into Indiana, and that's where the incentive should be.
Absolutely. I feel that. And then, Ben, I'll ask you the same question. Is that a thing? You said people don't really like, they're not overwhelmed with shock and horror when you call yourself a socialist. They're not like, oh my God, Cuba, or oh my God, Venezuela. But I'm sure, there's still that perception that, oh my God, we're going to raise taxes. How do you talk about that with folks?
Yeah, I mean, you can, first of all, you can see that the way that we have the tax structure in Indiana today, it's not working for the vast majority of Hoosiers, right? Senate Enrolled Act 1 from 2025, you talked about, is pulling millions of dollars away from schools. We're not really getting the property taxes that they're promising, right? People with middle value homes are getting a slight cut, or not even, they're going up less. But people with lower cost homes, they're getting it stuck to them. One of the things I like to talk about is we have a flat income tax here in Indiana, right? One of the few states that has a flat income tax, and it's one of the lowest flat income tax rates across the country. And Republicans like to say, yes, that's great, we lower taxes. Well, what does a flat income tax rate do? It disproportionately affects the lower income Hoosiers, right? It benefits the rich because they get to keep much more of their income. So I think that with the state of Indiana is today, the lack of public services, the lack of affordability, that I don't think that there's any tax structure in the state that should be held sacred. We should put it all on the table and work backwards from making sure every Hoosier has what they need at minimum to survive: food, clothing, shelter, education, healthcare, all those things. And start from there, not from the place where we're at today, because where we're at today isn't working.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? So just a couple minutes left here before we got to wrap up. Harrison, what is one thing that I missed that you wanted to make sure you talked about tonight?
I'm not sure if I can't think of anything that was missed, but if you have something else maybe you wanted to ask that you didn't get a chance to.
What is one commitment you want to see from our next Secretary of State?
I think the commitment should be kind of addressing corruption and how the contracts are awarded to kind of like with the businesses that with businesses that are, because that also is the creation of businesses. So I think that there should be kind of a better way to really address like small businesses and things like that. I think that's an important part, and also really focusing on the elections as well, trying to get where the elections, you're easier to do. You actually are more informed. I think the biggest thing is informing voters. Like, how do we inform voters who's there? What's that process look like? And I think that would help with the deficit of people not knowing, who they're voting for. But I think a lot of times it's kind of on purpose because,
Yes.
less informed voter means that they're going to vote for kind of their who you go get a beer with, which I think was always a silly way to choose your president.
Or it's who you have brand loyalty for, right? It's like, are you Team Coke or Team Pepsi? You just keep going for that. And then we have straight party ticket voting in Indiana too, which certainly doesn't help along that way. That's a big hindrance to independence for sure. Joshua, what is one thing I missed?
Oh, I'd say just, a wise man once said that, doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity. I think the quote usually gets attributed to Einstein because it's a smart idea. But, and then another wise man would probably look at that and say that's also the definition of practice. But I think practice entails that there's some improvement, and I don't think we've seen a whole lot of that. So I'll leave that on that.
Very good. Ben, last question to you then. What did I miss? What do you want to make sure you get on the record tonight before I have everybody tell where they can be found?
Yeah, so, I talked a lot about, the burden it is, much harder for independents to get ballot access in the hours and the days and the cold and the snow and the heat and the rain. But another population of unsung heroes for independents is all of the county election staff. I've gotten to know, the county clerks and election staff for the counties in this area. I was just back in Tippecanoe County, I'm there several days a week, right? So handing in signatures throughout this period. So they have to go through every single signature, look up their voter registration, make sure they live in the right place. So, not only is it a burden for us to go through and ask that question, they've got to spend basically the same amount of time as it does to knock a door, have a quick conversation, sign that signature over again to go back and verify. So I just want to say thanks number one, thanks to all of the county election staff that have been working with us on this kind of burdensome process. And I forgot the second thing. Sorry. So thanks to those staffers of doing that. The other thing was that, if we could change the rules a little bit to make it easier, not just for us, but also make it easier for them. If there was more automation, if it was, electronic signature or something where it could be more automated. The one staffer said to me on Monday yesterday was that I think this is the most tedious thing that I do in my job period by far is verifying these independent signatures.
So the infrastructure of democracy could certainly stand to be improved. It sounds like all around. Listen, guys, it's been a pleasure to have all of you here. I really do appreciate what you're doing. It takes a lot of courage to run for office, and it takes even more to do it outside of the traditional structure. So, thank you for doing what you're doing to, put a little a crack in the glass ceiling, as it were. So I guess let me start with Harrison. Where can folks find you and connect with you online if you would even like them to?
There's a Socialist Party of Indiana website that we can go to. I think it's socialistpartyin.com, and go on there. From there, you can talk with us, and we definitely have a Discord that people can join, where we talk. We kind of discuss more things.
All right, very good. Joshua, how can folks learn more about your campaign, perhaps volunteer and or donate?
Do everything through the campaign website, which is electjoshuabrant.org.
Very good. And Ben, how about you?
Yep, so the cornerstone of where you can find all my socials, everything is also my website, bendavis4indiana.com, and that's FOR4.
Very good. Fantastic. Thanks again, gentlemen. Stand by. I'm going to send you backstage. Say goodbye to the viewers, and I will say goodbye to you on the other side of that. But until then, Harrison Jacobo, Joshua Brant, Ben Davis, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight on the Who's Left podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us on.
All right. So, again, that was Ben Davis, Joshua Brant, and Harrison Jacobo, independent candidates for elected office here in Indiana, doing their part to give Hoosiers more than the same two options. I will link to all of their campaign pages in the show notes, which will be available later tonight at progressiveindiana.net. You can find all of my work there, as well as that of other left-leaning Hoosier voices. We can't do it without your support, so please consider contributing to Who's Left and the wider network with a paid subscription if you're able. This independent media project relies solely on the generosity of kind patrons like you to make this information available for free to everybody. Again, that's at progressiveindiana.net. We could also really use a follow on social media at Progressive Indiana Network on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at the same handle, and over on Blue Sky and TikTok, we are at PIN Indiana. I will be back Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. for Who's Left This Week, Indiana's only unapologetically progressive Sunday morning politics show. My guests for this week's Independence Day special are Statehouse District 31 candidate Katie Robbins and Executive Director of Equality Indiana, G. David Caudill. We will discuss the week's top Indiana stories, U.S. and international news through a Hoosier lens, and reflect on our country's 250th birthday. Tune in on YouTube, Facebook Live, or on Substack Live at progressiveindiana.net. Thanks again to my guests tonight, and thank you for watching. Connect with me online at whosleft.us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. Who's Left on all the rest. Direct message me at any of those sites with feedback, tips, ideas, and concerns, or email me directly at scott@whosleft.us. Finally, please forward the show to a friend and have them pass it on too. Let's keep building this project and a truly democratic state, one conversation at a time. Until the next one, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.